increase to my beanie for the little baby. I think if I make it any bigger round, it's probably going to be too big. We're going to end up with a beret or something that's not the look we're going for. So we're going to end it right there. And this is the end of my increase. Now, what I mean when I'm saying the end of my increase, when I'm adding more stitches around than just meeting one hole with one stitch, what that means is I'm wanting it to get bigger in circumference. And so I'm done wanting it to get bigger, and now what I want is for the size of this beanie to be what it is and to start coming out and creating that hat, just like this one. You know, I'm done getting bigger, and now I want it to start coming down. And so to make this start coming down is a very simple process. I simply stop adding those 2 double crochets into the holes, and I'm going to meet each individual stitch with simply 1 double crochet. And in doing that, I'm no longer increasing, and so I'm going to start creating the look, or creating the bucket, which is going to be my hat. Now remember, anytime we have a double crochet, we're going to chain 2. That counts as a stitch, and now we've created enough room to create our next row. So we're on row, what? We had 1 row. That was our 6 stitches. The second row was a double crochet in each. Our third row was the pattern, and so now we're on row 4. And row 4 is simply going to be 1 double crochet in each open stitch as we're going around. Just 1 double crochet in each open stitch. And that's going to be row 4. So I'm going to yarn over. Remember, that counts. My chain counts as a double crochet, so I'll go to my next open stitch. And I think right here what beginners need to be careful of is not to pull that too tightly, okay? Don't pull it too tightly, or your hat's going to start fitting a baby doll and not a real baby. So I'm going to yarn over down into the next open stitch and just do 1 double crochet. I lost my stitch. But you yarn over, you just do 1 double crochet. Real simple. Yarn over, find my next open stitch, and do 1 double crochet. Just like so. Yarn over, next stitch, 1 double crochet. And then I'm going to continue to do that all the way around the beanie. Again, this is row 4. Now, row 4, 5, and 6 of this beanie are exactly the same. You're simply going to do 1 double crochet in each open stitch. And sometimes the number of rows you need to do will matter depending on how big the baby's head is, and that's the beautiful thing about making your own crochet hat. I say that because my son had a really big head, and we couldn't really find a hat to fit him off the shelf. So, you know, that would have been real great to be able to crochet him a hat and actually create the size that we want. So if you have a newborn, or if you have maybe a preemie, you can always create a smaller hat than this. And if you have a child with a larger head, you can always create a bigger hat. So that's the beauty of being able to do this. And the size of the hat is going to matter depending on how big your yarn is and how big your needle is. So both of those things matter. And I'm just going around through here putting double crochets in each open stitch. 1 double crochet in each stitch. That's all I'm doing. And I'm just about to the beginning here. And when I get to the beginning, then I've created row 4. I'm there. So I'm going to slip stitch. Whoop, hit my camera. I'm going to slip stitch right in there. And now do you see how I can't really fold that out anymore? It started to turn up, and that's exactly what I wanted it to do. And so it's turning up for me. That was row 4. Now row 5 and 6 are going to be exactly the same. And so what I want you to do is to create 2 more rows exactly like that. You're going to chain up 2, 1, 2, and then you're going to put a double crochet into each open stitch. And you're going to do that 2 more times around, and that's going to be rows 5 and 6. And then I'm going to meet you back here and see how our beanies look compared to one another. Okay, we're back here, and what we have finished is all the way up to row 6. And if you flatten your hat out, flatten your beanie out sideways, you're going to see that you're starting to get that beanie shape, exactly what you want. you've done 6 rows using a double stitch each time, and so that's really all there is to it. And I stopped this right here at 6 because for most little babies we're getting really close to this being plenty big enough. Now, in my opinion, it looks better if the bottom of the beanie has a little more of a finer stitch, just a smaller stitch than the big holes. And so instead of trying to create some border that's difficult, since this is a beginning beanie, what I thought we would do, because it's a whole lot easier, is simply to take make the hole, make your little loop here where your needle is a little big, and pull your needle out. And so we've been using an N. We're going to take our N and we're going to lay it to the side because we're done with the N right now, and we're going to grab ourselves, I'm going to use an L. You know, if you wanted to use one bigger, one smaller, it's not really going to make a big difference, but I'm going to stick my L in the hoop and I'm going to pull it down tight. Well, not real tight, but pull it snug there for the L. And what I'm doing in this is the size of your needle, like I'd shown you before, actually means a whole lot when you're talking about the size of your stitches. So the last 2 rows we're going to do in our beanie has a total of 8 rows, which is very small and you know, not real detailed, but the last 2 rows we're going to create with this much smaller hook. And in just changing the hook the way I did, we're not going to have to tie this off twice or start a new row or anything like that. What we are going to do, because we've slip stitched our last row, is we're simply going to chain up 2, and you're going to continue your beanie exactly like you were doing it, just with a smaller needle. That's simple. So you're going to yarn over and go down, and you're going to do 1 double crochet in each open stitch. That's simple. With the smaller needle, that double crochet is going to pull just a little bit tighter. It's going to give the beanie a nice snug right around the face where you want it. And honestly, for some babies, just 1 row around with this smaller needle is going to be enough of a finish off for the hat. If the beanie's getting too big for the baby that you're intending it for, you can just stop it right there. Won't matter at all. So you're going to go all the way around just like that. And what I'm going to do right now is just cut the video again and let you finish on around and create your 2 rows. The 2 rows is going to be the max I would do there, and I'm going to show you how to tie it off at the end. Okay, I'm at the very end here, and I've slip stitched to start my end or to create that final round, and now I'm done with that. And so let's talk about tying this off, because this is much simpler than some people try to make it. Here's how I'm going to tie this off. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut my yarn, giving myself a little tail. Okay, so now I have a tail, and I'm just going to yarn over and pull the tail through the loop. That's simple. Pull the tail through the loop and then just let go of my needle. And I'm going to give that a nice little tug. Now, I'm not completely done. You see I have this tail here, and I'm not going to cut that off, because if I cut that off and then I pull my beanie just a little too hard one time, it's all going to start unraveling. And that's the beauty of crochet and knitting. You know how one thread can make this beautiful thing if you know how to tie the right knots in it. And so it is just a series of knots, and we don't want that to come unraveled. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a darning needle, and I just have a big darning needle here. These are really easy to find. They're the needles that have the blunt end on them, so you can't hurt yourself. The ones we let little kids play with, or back in the day we used to sew with the plastic canvas, if anybody remembers that. You're showing your age just like I am. And so the plastic canvas needle. I'm going to thread my darning needle with my chunky yarn and then go to the inside of the hat. And here's how easy this is to finish off. I'm simply going to sew my end into my hat, and what I usually do is work it one way and then back another. There's really no way, if you do this properly, that anybody's ever going to see where you've sewn the end of your hat. Nobody will ever know where it begins and where it ends, and that's a real good thing. Okay, so after you do that 2 or 3 times, you don't have to sew the whole tail in. You know, you just do it 2 or 3 times. I always give it a tug to know how long it's going to stretch. And then you just cut the tail off right there. Cut that tail off. And turn that back right side out. And there we go. It's finished off on the bottom just perfectly. You have to really look to see where the end of that chain is to know where the back of the hat is. And we have a tail up at top too, and you can do that exactly the same way if you want. What I would do to this tail is poke it to the inside. Poke it to the inside, and then take your darning needle and just thread that yarn right onto the darning needle, and then you're going to work that tail into your hat. The top one I'm probably not as picky with as I am the end, because it's very unlikely that one's going to come out. Just work it a couple times and then trim it off, and your hat is very secure and completely finished off. Now, in the beginning, I told you that we were going to make the little beanie, and this is the baby size beanie. Now, we talked about the different sizes of your needles and what they meant. I want you to check this out. The original beanie that I showed you is here. This is the one that fits my 8-year-old. And this is the one you just made. And I know with the same color, sometimes it's hard to see the size difference, but if I line them up, maybe you can see the size difference. There's quite a bit of difference. And the main difference here is that with the big beanie, I used my big needle, my size Q needle. And I did that until I got to the very, very end, and then I pulled out the N. And that's how I finished it off. And with my baby beanie, the N was the big needle that I started with, and then I finished it off with an L. And so that truly is the difference in size, and that's a significant difference when you're talking about head circumference and being able to fit other people. But if you're wanting to make this baby beanie and you want to make it for a young girl or a small woman, then you need to just go out and find a bigger hook. Changing the pattern's not necessary. If you wanted to, you could, but you could just find a bigger hook and then do that. What we did, however, was this one. And now you are free to put any type of bauble you'd like right down here on the bottom of it, but I told you I would show you how to make this little pom-pom, and so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to make a little pom-pom to go on our baby's hat, because those are just cute. So hang on just a second and let me gather my space, and we'll make a pom-pom. And here we go with the pom-pom. Here's all I did. I have just a little bit of yarn left from my skein, so I made my toddler hat and my youth hat with the same skein of yarn, and I have just this tiny bit left. So what I went in and did was cut myself a string. It's not real long, maybe 6 or 7 inches, not very long at all. So I cut a string, and I have that. And then what I have left of this yarn, I'm really going to do this quite simply. I'm just going to make a pom-pom by twirling this around my hand. And now my hands are sort of large, so if you have very small hands, you're going to look different. For the little baby hat, I think I'm going to use just the width of my fingers here, not much more. So kind of on the tip of my fingers. See, I'm just twirling that around, nothing fancy. I'm just twirling this around. There's no rhyme or reason to how I'm doing it, although I don't really want that knot in my yarn. There we go. So around and around and around we go. And I'm just going to use the rest of it because honestly that little tiny piece of yarn is going to do me no good anywhere else. And so this baby might as well have a poofy ball. Okay, so there we go. That's the rest of my yarn. It's all that I have left. I'm going to slide it right off my hand. Okay. And then I'm going to take the string I had already cut, lay my little tuft of yarn right in the middle, and pretty much, guys, this is so simple. All I want to do is tie that right in the middle. See, I'm doing that. I'm just eyeballing it. Nothing special here. Just tying it right in the middle. Now, I do want to tie it really, really tight because I don't want my yarn, or I don't want my poof ball to fall apart. So pull that just as tight as I can, and then I'm going to pull it again. Now, there's a purpose for these 2 long strings. These 2 long strings are actually going to be what I tie it to my hat with. So I'm going to leave those. Double knot that, get it tied real good, and then get your scissors out. And you're going to go in and you're just going to start cutting loops. Just that simple. You're going to cut some loops. Nothing strenuous going on here. Cut loops, cut loops, cut loops. And when you get all of your loops cut, then I come back, okay? Okay, and now I have all of my strings cut. And I actually went and got a different pair of scissors because I was using my daughter's and they really weren't very good on this yarn. When you get your ball cut, you're thinking, well, that doesn't look very good. And you're right, it doesn't look very good. When we're making a poof ball, one of the most important things for the poof ball is actually the haircut you give it afterwards. So what you don't want to do is try to go in and unravel the individual yarn threads. That's going to make your poof ball look like a bad perm. What you're wanting to do here actually is give this a haircut to make it even and shorter. Okay, and the shorter you make it, the poofier it's going to be, and it's going to stand up. Okay, so I always start at the bottom and I actually just cut it off. Just give it a little haircut. You're not going to hurt it. Honestly, if you do, it's just a little bit of yarn. You can start over again, right? So we're going to give this a haircut and give it a shape. See, it's already looking better right around the bottom. I like that. Okay, and then we're going to give the top a little bit of a haircut and sort of just even it up and shape it up all the way around. You'll notice as you're cutting it shorter that it looks fuller, and that's what you're wanting. You want to create that ball. Don't get all trigger happy or snippy happy. You know, you don't want to cut big hunks out. You're just sort of snipping off the top. Okay, you're snipping off the top, and I'm kind of getting out of the camera there, sorry. Pulling it to myself too much. But you're snipping off the top, and when I snip off the top, you can see that mine's turning into this cute little poof ball. And that's exactly what we want for the top of our hat. This is the way all little poof balls are made. You know, if you make a scarf, you can always make little poof balls to go on the end of it, or if you do gloves or leg warmers or anything like that. So that's how we make a little tiny poof ball. That easy. Of course, you do end up with a mess, and that's fine. Just push your mess away, act like it never happened, and you have yourself a cute little poof ball. Looks just like that. Now, how do you get that on the hat? Real simple. Grab your hat, and you just literally poke the strings. See, I'm poking the strings down into the holes in the hat. Just make sure that symmetrically you put them on the same holes to both the left and right. Same holes to the left and right, and pull it tight. Now I'm going to turn my hat inside out, and I used my 2 big long strings. Make sure you don't give those a haircut. Okay, the 2 big long strings, the ones you used to initially tie it, you want to keep those so you can double knot that and then pull it back out, and there we go. You've just put your own fancy poof ball right there on the top of your hat, and it's really, really cute. I like that very, very much. And of course, you could do a different color poof ball than your hat, and that would be a nice contrast if you wanted to, if you had a team you were cheering for. Also, when you join the ranks of the intermediate out of the beginner, you could put a different colored poof ball and a different colored brim on the hat, and it would also be really, really cute. But there's one variation on a beginner beanie for a little baby, and if you want to do one for a younger girl or a small lady, you can always just use that bigger hook. And that is our lesson on how to double crochet a beanie today. Thank you very much.